tone will have an immediate emotional impact on your counterpart. It is one of the first things that people notice about you. Your tone can make or break your attempts at tactical empathy. Tone includes pitch, pace, volume, and timbre, which is like the emotional quality of your voice. Some people might say it's the intonation, the speed, the pitch, the rhythm. Tone provides a lot of meaning for your counterpart. We use the 738-55, but we're kind of getting away from that. But just know that tone is the foundation that switches on every other Black Swan skill. Tone and curiosity, without those two things done well, will render any negotiation technique ineffective. Your tone has to match your words and your actions to be taken seriously. An assertive or impatient tone will be remembered and can cause problems later on after you're out of the moment. Even if you think you've won an argument, if your tone was wrong, that's what's going to be remembered, and that's going to throw up obstacles going forward in your relationship and in your long-term deals, even in your short-term deals. An improper tone will introduce negative emotions on the side of your counterpart, which makes them think less clearly, puts them on the defensive, and makes them not want to do business with you. A well-practiced good tone of voice actually helps your counterpart dial in and listen. If you slow your cadence and maybe talk a little softer, it makes them concentrate on you. When you slow your voice down, when you lower your tone, it is human nature to think that what you're saying is important. They'll give it more weight. Tone should be practiced just like every other Black Swan technique, and it should be observed. People remember the most intense part of a negotiation and the last part, the last few minutes. So if the most intense part of the negotiation is anger, impatience, an assertive tone, that will drive the intensity up, and they will remember that. So even if the meeting ends well, they're going to remember it less favorably than they would have had you stayed in the moment and controlled your voice tone. On the bright side, if used well, tone allows your counterpart to feel heard. They're going to feel more comfortable in the conversation, and you're going to put them in a more positive frame of mind, which will make them want to do business with you. Just like in everyday life, if your voice tone paints the picture of you as the kind of person other people want to talk to, your counterpart is going to take that back to their team. They're going to speak your value because you treated them with respect and didn't let your voice tone get out of hand. Know that the assertive voice tone is always destructive. It is always a problem. There is no circumstance where an assertive voice tone, an impatient voice tone is constructive or helpful in any difficult conversation or negotiation. If we use a downward inflection in our tone, it will lead your counterpart to believe that you understand what they're saying and you're giving them permission to go on. If you have reached a point in your negotiation where you have addressed the negative emotions and you are moving forward with an agreement, your pace will probably pick up. And you will notice that your counterpart's pace in speaking will probably pick up. And you can read that as they're dropping their guard a little bit. In exercises that we do, we have found that everybody reacts in very similar ways to the three voice tones. People have a harder time making decisions. They have a harder time getting through the assertive voice tone. When we switch to an analyst voice tone, you can usually see a change in your counterpart where they start to slow down as well. They think more clearly and more nimbly than they did with the assertive tone, and they're able to start collaborating with you at that point and getting some forward progress in your negotiation. When we use the accommodator voice, which should be about 80% of your time in a difficult conversation or negotiation, 20% in analyst, about 80% in accommodator. When we switch to the accommodator voice tone, you can see people relax. You can see people start thinking more clearly, and they oftentimes are more generous in their offers. They genuinely want to reciprocate the good feeling you're giving them with your tone of voice, and that helps you. If you show deference to your counterpart using only tone alone, you will have great success. If you fail to monitor your tone and you use any negotiation technique, including Black Swan techniques, they just aren't going to be effective. There was one incident. I had just promoted a sergeant. I was on graveyard. We had a guy that had cut his throat, his own throat, pretty decent on the side there. He hadn't got anything terribly important yet, but he was standing on the inside of a security screen door because he was a little mental, but his girlfriend had left him, and so he had decided he's going to kill himself, and he'd started that process. And I had a new cop standing there talking to him through the door, trying to get him to unlock the door, because rushing him wasn't going to do any good. He had a knife in his hand, and by the time we got through that door, he'd have done himself some serious damage. So I just did the slow and low because I'd had hostage negotiation training, and that had two effects. One, it calmed him down from screaming, because after just a few sentences, he realized that as he was yelling at me, I wasn't yelling back. I wasn't doing it the way that we were supposed to do it. Humans, when you yell at somebody, they're supposed to yell back at you. Mm-hmm. You know, and I wasn't doing that. So he calmed down. Well, the other thing was, because I had lowered my volume, he couldn't stand across the room anymore. And he asked me to speak up a couple of times, and I'd get a little bit, I'd raise my volume just a little bit, but I'd bring it back down, and it made him walk over to the door. And once he was at the door in that voice tone, I finally got him to put the knife down and unlock the door. My new guy, he told me later, he goes, "Man, you got your bedroom voice on." It works, because in a difficult conversation or negotiation, they're accustomed to how other people have usually treated them, and that includes their tone of voice. So if they come to a negotiation and there's a sticking point in a contract, or there's a sticking point in some piece of the business, they're going to be mad, and they're going to have all kinds of things ready. When I say this, he's going to say this, and I'm going to put him right in his place. And when you start out again with that decent tone of voice, that has an immediate emotional impact on them. So arguably, tone is most important upon first contact. It never becomes unimportant, but that's one of the first things they're going to notice about you, and that's going to set the tone for the rest of your negotiation or the rest of your difficult conversation. And so if they're angry and they're expecting an argument from you, and instead you start out in an accommodator tone or an analyst tone and exercise genuine curiosity, their mirror neurons, they're going to come down with you and start talking, because they realize you're not arguing.
Remember, you don't get in life what's fair, you get what you negotiate. If you want to become a better negotiator, click the link in the description below.